the person would have self-harm. The person also would have chronic feelings of abandonment, boredom, impulsivity. Over 20 years, 98% of people would get better on their own. So it's only the urgency of the treatment at that time. Think before you act. Think before you act. Count backwards, as our grandparents would have told us. So count 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, and the impulse to harm yourself goes away. Just because you have borderline personality and depression, you would not start giving medications right away. And medications have very, very minimal role. That's what the wise people have said.
First, I would like to ask, if someone is suffering from borderline personality disorder, so what are the most important and common criteria? And how can someone understand that he or she might be dealing with borderline personality disorder so they can reach out for help?
Right. Thank you. And the borderline personality disorder is really close to my heart. It's a passion of mine. And the person who evolved, if you don't mind me going in the background, was John Gunderson. John Gunderson brought borderline personality into the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. That's the compendium of all psychiatric illnesses. And in 1980, back in DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, called as DSM, the third version in 1980. And he put down the criteria as someone who has short depressive features lasting for a few hours. The person would have self-harm. The person also would have chronic feelings of abandonment, boredom, impulsivity. But beyond that, beyond these criteria, he also emphasized before his death that it's not everyone who self-harms has borderline personality disorder. And unfortunately, that's what is practiced. If I'm a busy mental health professional, I find a young person, usually a girl in their teens or early 20s, would come and they have self-harmed themselves. I'll call them borderline. That's not quite borderline. The context is very important here. So John Gunderson emphasizes that usually in romantic settings, typically a young girl or a girl in early 20s is feeling abandoned, that it's intense interpersonal relationship that has developed, and because of the real or imagined abandonment, the person is going to self-harm. It fluctuates, the mood fluctuates quite a lot, the self-harm happens, the feelings of abandonment comes. And that is usually the context, not a context if I'm a 65-year-old male who is self-harming for some gain, say for insurance purposes, or unfortunately if I'm imprisoned in an institution.
It's mostly the feeling of abandonment.
The feelings of abandonment in romantic context, intense interpersonal relationship. That's how he describes in a romantic setting. So fluctuating mood, and that to leading to self-harm usually, or feelings of impulsivity. That's what would lead to us to diagnose or suspect borderline personality disorder.
Thank you so much for describing it in a very simple manner. So next, for someone who has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, so how we can bring out help for them? What are the common treatment and management for borderline personality disorder?
Right. So first thing to explore a bit, Dr. Hafsa, if I may, is that the prognosis is very good here. So they say 20%, over 20 years, 98% of people would get better on their own. So it's only the urgency of the treatment at that time. So the treatment mainly consists of talk therapy, the psychotherapy or the behavior therapy. Traditionally, it's the dialectical behavior therapy propounded by a person called Marsha Linehan. She got it. She kind of conceived this treatment. But it's an elaborate treatment. It's a manual-based treatment. It requires extensive training. It requires quite a bit of expense. And it requires involvement of the person. So it's not always practical and not always that you would get the teams who would deliberate DBT or dialectical behavior therapy. Later on, John Gunderson devised a therapy, and that is a very practical way of dealing with borderline personality disorder. And that therapy consists of, is known as General Psychiatric Management, GPM. And that's very simple. So they say, if I may describe it, number one, act or think before you act. So usually what brings us that person to attention would be this, that the person has self-harmed themselves, So how, think before you act. Think before you act. Count backwards, as our grandparents would have told us. So count 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, and the impulse to harm yourself goes away.
So those kind of things you actually put in the training when you counsel the patient.
Right. The second thing is, as they say often, that more work than love. So we know romantic love is always iffy. If I love someone so intensely, whether my love would ever be returned in the same measure. And you can't love someone in the same measure over a long period of time. And if you are young, it becomes even more of a problem. Whether that person loves or she has not texted me back, that means she has abandoned me and she has gone to someone else or whatever has happened. So I would have this kind of a panic feeling. So if I am involved in my day-to-day work, I have a schedule between 9 and 5 or whatever, then I have those challenges of the workplace. So my focus would not be so much at my love and whatever that person would be doing or would not be doing, and that my emotions are not predicated, if you like, on that idea that she has or he has abandoned me. The third part is the psychosocial rehabilitation. Very easy about that the therapists themselves would give examples from their own life and how you can convey it to people with borderline personality disorder, that how they can inculcate those habits or those traits so as to cope with it. So this is as good as others. GPM is a standard treatment. Now sometimes medications are also given, and those medications would help some people for some time, but medications are not the cornerstone of the treatment. Just because you have borderline personality and depression, you would not start giving medications right away. And medications have very, very minimal role. That's what the wise people have said.
Because people sneeze. Because not everyone washes their hands. Because kids touch a lot of things. Set a date to get your COVID shot and RSV if eligible. Because if you're wondering, should I get my COVID shot? Think about other people. Learn more at nj.gov/health/vaccines.
নিউ ইয়র্ক থেকে সম্প্রচারিত TBN 24 টেলিভিশন বিশ্বজুড়ে বাঙালির কণ্ঠস্বর।